Morning, everybody, or wherever you are in the world. Hello. It's Brian back here with another live video. I'm going to be on today talking to Justin Ehrlich, who's a Chinese medical doctor out in California. He should be joining us here shortly, and I'm going to read you just his bio on his website, which I posted a link to in the description of the live video. And so I'll start with that. Against Justin Ehrlich, Integrative Chinese Medicine. And he says, drawn to many of the mystical practices that originated in ancient China for most of my life, I've been a California state licensed acupuncturist since 2002 and a student of the Jade Purity branch of Taoism since 2001. All right, looks like Justin's here. Hey, Justin, I see you're here. There should be a radio button down somewhere, I think on the lower left. Oh, there you are. Cool. That didn't take long. All right, I'm adding Justin now. So I'll go ahead and wait for him to join us. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. Initially, just really want to have Justin, tell us how he got to what he's doing now, kind of his life story leading up to where he's at. And so we'll be kind of diving into that. And then one really interesting topic that I mentioned, he's still adding, by the way, is microdosing that we're going to get into today, which I'm really interested in. I've never done before, and most of my knowledge of it has been with friends of mine that have tried it. Most of which with what I had heard of was with like mushrooms. Oh, there he is.
Hey,
Right.
how's it going?
Good.
Good. Sorry, I've never done this before, so
Well, I
it's
would
a
say
little.
you crushed it because that was just like boom, boom, boom. Yeah, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Really good. Yeah, beautiful
Yeah.
day, Colorado. I'm up in Gothic and outside of Crested Butte, and it's one of my favorite times of year. All the leaves are changing on the aspens right now, and they're
Yeah, it's got to be gorgeous.
just like golden because they go from like a yellow to this gold.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna have to get out for a bike ride today at some point because I saw a buddy of
Yeah.
mine posted a picture this morning from him and his girlfriend out on a ride. And I was just like, oh my, I gotta get out there. So
Yeah. The
uh,
changing, the changing of the colors is such an amazing thing.
yeah, a lot of people come here and have weddings and all kinds of stuff. I work for the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory, and we're having a big science conference this week.
Nice.
Really cool too. So I've been involved in that, um, doing a lot of science directed at preserving our planet, which is something I'm really passionate about as well. So
Definitely something we need to be doing. Um, Totally separate life than what I'm doing now, but my family was involved in environmental restoration and bioremediation and pollution cleanup and all that, doing using various strains of bacteria to break down pollutants and
oh wow.
restore the environment for land and water use. So I've been around a lot of that in my life.
So one of your parents was a biologist or ecologist?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. My dad's an ecologist. Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Well, that's interesting because I was just saying before you added that we're having you on. I was reading your bio and that we had this topic of microdosing. That was one thing we wanted to talk about, and like
Mhm.
everything you do now, and kind of where you're going with everything. But at first, I wanted to talk about your family and your life and kind of how you got to where you are now.
You know
So,
how I got here was pretty random. In the sense I grew up doing martial arts and I had a love affair with the old Chinese kung fu flicks and started training martial arts and then got interested in the uh, the medical side of it, all the liniments and the salves and the ointments and that sort of stuff. And then I got more and more interested. I learned some massage techniques, how to treat injuries, that sort of stuff. And I just really, really loved it. And I never thought I would be a an acupuncturist or a Chinese medicine practitioner. I studied Japanese, lived in Japan, worked as a translator, and then was just unhappy sitting behind a desk all the time. And a friend was like, "Oh, why don't you just go to Chinese medicine school? You read about it all the time." And it was just
It's
like a little epiphany moment.
what kind of kung fu were you into when you were
I
young?
do a southern style called Hung Gar.
Oh, cool.
It's all the old flicks. There was a very famous Hung Gar teacher that was a fight choreographer. And so
Hmm.
he's in a lot of the movies. So a lot of the classic kung fu movies have elements of Hung Gar in there because a very famous director was a Hung Gar fighter as
Cool.
well.
Yeah, I myself used to be into Wing Chun Kung Fu. I don't know if you heard
Uh
of
huh.
that.
Yeah.
Way into that for a long time. And it's interesting that what you just said because I remember, I think we talked online a little bit, and I told you I got into Chinese medical herbs for a little bit. I
Hmm.
make it and Chinese medicine, and actually, what got me there was the same as you. I was into kung fu,
Hmm.
really doing one-on-one private lessons with this really awesome sifu for a long time, and he was actually a healer,
Hmm.
and um, so in my pursuit, we did a lot of qigong in this
Yeah.
practice, and so in reading about that, yeah, the majority of the literature out there was actually more on the healing end of things because it's
Yeah.
all one system, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a great venue, and it's a sort of a natural evolution. Is that you learn in the Taoist paradigm, we always talk about the physical health, the emotional health, the spiritual health, but they're also sort of like a progression. It's
Mm.
hard to start working with your emotional body if you haven't begun to have some degree of somatic awareness, because it's much easier to perceive tension in my arm than it is to perceive an emotion. Physical tension is much more substantial. And so you begin your journey by working with the most coarse, the easiest to work with, which would be the physical. And then that leads you towards perceiving, oh, well, there's something else there. And then working with the emotional body then allows you to begin to perceive things on a even more subtle level in terms of the spiritual energetics.
Awesome. Hey, I just want to mention if I suddenly collapse and disappear,
Mm-hmm.
I got a work chair I'm sitting on. It's really wobbly. I've been saying that for the last couple of days. I'm like, I'm gonna be talking to someone, all of a sudden, just poof.
Gone.
Uh, I think it'll be okay. I'm gonna be real gentle. This old cabin I'm in, so everything in here is really old too. So, yeah. So it starts with you said like the physical body, like in
Mm-hmm.
my instance, sounds like with yours, with kung fu and getting in touch with our somatics. And then like yeah, with things like we did like a form of fire qigong, which
Mm-hmm.
was basically the main Silam Tao, which is like the first uh,
Mm-hmm. Form of Wing Chun.
yeah, and then actually all of the other forms are all within that form. Really cool. But
Mm-hmm.
taking that and then adding like the kind of that was actually my first experience at meditation in my life was then I was probably my early 20s, but
Yeah, and those sort of like mindful somatic practices require a certain type of presence that is really very similar to meditative work. And so it's a good
mm,
gateway into meditation. You may not be sitting on the cushion necessarily, but you're very mindful as you're studying how your body is moving in space and the sensations of what your body is feeling and all that sort of stuff. And so for people who aren't ready to go spend hours on a cushion, you can
uh,
still gain a lot of sort of mindfulness meditative skills that prepare you for the cushion by doing these physical practices. And that could be yoga. It doesn't have to be martial arts. It could be dance. It could be anything that is done with a certain degree of mindfulness. So they were traditionally a gateway into meditation practices because we all know if you've spent time on the cushion, like as a beginner, it's it's tough.
yeah,
The mind goes nuts.
yeah.
So it's a lot easier to be mindful in your body doing a Tai Chi form or doing a yoga practice
It's
than it is
funny
to
that
just.
because that's the thing I hear, some of my friends out there, and I love them, and I'm there with them, and like we've talked, my intention is in the broadcasting things that I'm doing is to connect with a lot of people that are kind of out of our, bubble,
Mhm.
you know, And some of the, what I hear a lot of times, I can't meditate. I just can't stop thinking.
Yeah.
As, yeah, that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you got to practice a little
Um,
bit. You know what I mean? It's like I can't be a quarterback because I can't, throw a
yeah,
ball.
and I think like one of the biggest areas we get stuck is that judgment that we're somehow when we're meditating, we're supposed to not be thinking.
Yeah, right.
We're actually,
Actually, the I've been doing a really cool meditation that I learned from my buddy Jesse Elder, called Prime Light Meditation,
mhm,
which like is 4 parts, 5 minutes each, for so 20 minutes a day, and I do it first thing in the morning. And the first 5 minutes is a typical kind of presencing what you would think of
mhm,
meditation, and then the second 5 minutes is a past appreciation. So I'm going
mhm,
past people, places, events, and appreciating what's got me to where I am now.
mhm,
And the third component is a future authoring. So I'm making
mhm,
the future me and weaponizing my intuition and kind of, visualizing my future that I want, And then the
mhm,
last 5 minutes is receiving. It's kind of going
mhm.
back and that's just receiving all those gifts. And so yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, that's an interesting topic. I'd love to unpack a little more right now. I think that is a misconception that you can't think, or you can't, if you're thinking, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my understanding of it, there's sort of, the mindfulness practices, stress management, those sorts of approaches to how we deal with our mental health is sort of like the beginning phases of meditation. It's sort of the detox phase, if you will, where there is a part of us that has to sit down and become really present with everything that's there inside of us, all the thoughts, all the feelings, all the memories, all the ghosts, all the random noise. And we begin to sort of detox some of that time. And during that phase of our meditative practice, we're going to have a lot of mental activity while we're sitting. And that's completely okay. But the longer we continue with those practices, or if we incorporate other facets of personal development, then we find that our mind begins to calm down. But even when your mind is really calm, say you've been an advanced meditator for 20 years and you can go really deep and do all this fancy stuff, you're still going to have thoughts that come through your mind. And I think as we get better at meditation, the part that really gets better is that we don't really care that the thoughts come in. We don't judge them anymore. They're just a thought and they move through like the clouds, which is what so many meditation practices say. Don't get attached to your thought, just let them move through like a cloud, return to the breath, all these sorts of things that are really just pointing us in the direction of saying it's okay to have a thought come through. They will
Yeah.
come through.
Yeah.
And
Would you say it's almost like a welcoming in those thoughts or emotions or whatever into our awareness? It's like just
mhm,
kind of welcoming it. That's
yeah,
interesting because
yeah,
I'm drawing a correlation between that and, like, authentic relating, and this essence or agreement of welcoming everything.
hmm
And
hmm
we, or the integral principle of include and transcend, and
hmm
that, or there's a really cool YouTube I've been meaning to post of Herbie Hancock. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I know who
Um,
he is. Yeah.
yeah, he was the piano player for Miles Davis, and he has a
hmm
really cool. He tells it's called No Wrong Note,
Hmm.
and it's when he was playing this gig back in the heyday, of jazz, like the late '50s in New York City, and they were just playing this gig, and everything was just popping, and then somehow Herbie Hancock hit the wrong chord, and it just rung out, like everything stopped, and then he said all of a sudden Miles Davis just started like playing notes around that chord that made that chord fit perfectly. Yeah.
It,
And so,
yeah, in flow with the Tao, adaptability.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and just put
beautiful.
in like every we can welcome it all, and through that
Hmm.
welcoming, transcendence just happens naturally. I'm gonna throw some waves out
Exactly.
here to
Okay.
everyone. I I was trying to. You saw me looking at my computer, figure out a way I can like do it on my computer, so I didn't have to mess with the phone. Um, but that doesn't seem like it is possible. Hello, everyone out there. Thanks for joining us. Please post any questions you have for Justin or I, and let us know you're out there. And then if you see this later, just let us know that too. And we're really glad you're here. And yeah, this is not just me and Justin talking, but we're talking with you guys too. So please engage and let us
Yeah.
know what you're thinking. Yeah. So, um, so yeah, I was reading your description,
Hmm.
and I mean, you do a lot of different things. So you're not only a Chinese medical doctor, but you're a life coach, which I guess is kind of part. That's again, it's kind
It
of a
is part of
holistic
it.
thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's just more a matter of the reason I like that term is it really kind of points people more towards the idea that they're there to get some advice so they can change their own lives rather than thinking they're coming to me and I'm the one that's supposed to fix everything. Because when you're in our society, when you're a doctor or you're a physician or you're an acupuncturist or a chiropractor, the sort of modern social programming around that is that you go to the doctor and they fix you. But you
yep,
go to a coach to learn how to do something for yourself. Um,
yeah.
and
Out more empowering
yeah,
relate. Yeah, yeah,
and especially when you work with chronic diseases or you work with um, chronic trauma, PTSD, that sort of stuff, empowerment is really the only way to see lasting, deep change.
yeah. That's really alive for me. Actually, as I told you, I was a critical care nurse for 10 years, and I
Yeah.
worked in Western medicine. Uh, and that's part of the reason why I'm not doing it anymore. To be honest with you, is that at the end of the day, you know, my last job felt a lot like I was kind of just perpetuating people's poor lifestyle decisions,
Hmm.
and it gets really hard. I mean, the last ICU I worked at was in inner city Denver at North Suburban Medical Center. What's up, everybody out there in the burb? All my peeps. But I worked in the ICU there, and yeah, I mean, I would say at least 80% of our patient population were what we call ETOH issues, alcohol abuse or drug abuse.
Hmm.
And, um, basically we just kind of patch them up, send them home, and see them again a week later, or a month later. And, you know, it just a lot of gaps in Western medicine.
Hmm.
The, uh, I would say more in primary care seems to be really evolving
Hmm.
towards a more holistic, especially pediatrics and family practice. But I would
It's a
say
it's a
Western,
tough situation
what's that?
for
Yeah.
sure. It's a tough situation for sure because there is the general view of Western medicine and how it looks at health that is evolving, right? Becoming more holistic. And then there's the insurance companies, which is really an entirely separate aspect of the medical system that the doctors don't have control over.
Yeah, well, and it's yeah, insurance companies, and then just new federal regulations and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, I tried to stay out of all that as a nurse, and
Hmm.
just take care of my patients.
Hmm.
But actually, it kind of got harder and harder as time went on, and yeah, like for instance, with electronic medical record, and we're kind of
Yeah.
getting on a side topic here. Um, it's really so hospitals get subsidized by the government, because a lot of people don't have like at the ICU
Yeah.
I work, like at least 80 or 90% of those people that came in didn't have insurance either,
Hmm.
and so and there's so many check boxes and so much redundancy that where my job ended up becoming so much more about charting than
Yeah.
taking care of the patient. And if you miss one thing, they take all the funding away, and so
Yeah.
like those check boxes. And so it's an interesting thing. You're right. It's a very complicated problem. There's which,
Yeah.
times that's had a lot of momentum behind it.
Hmm.
I would say like Western medicine, I was a flight nurse for a while, a trauma nurse, and that's where it really excels is
Hmm.
saving lives. You can't
Absolutely.
yeah. But
Yeah.
with a lot of chronic illness and things like that, it kind of falls short.
Yeah, it definitely falls short. And that's not all, sometimes doctors get a bad rap because they don't do all this stuff, but it's really not fair to put that entirely on them. It has to do with their training, it has to do with the world that they grew up in, and it also has to do with laws that are put on them by
Yeah,
the
there's a real
insurance companies that they're just not allowed to do what they need to do.
yeah, there's a
Um,
really interesting book I would recommend if anyone's interested in this out there. I think it's called The House of God, and it's written by a physician, and yeah, it's talking about this issue and way people are trained. Which the
yeah,
mantra when I have a lot of physician friends, is buff the chart, turf the patient. You know,
yeah,
so that gives you an idea of what
yeah.
you know. Yeah,
It's a tough, tough one.
and it's yeah, you're right. It's in my experience in the medical field, pretty much everyone gets into it because they've went through something personally, with somebody
Hmm.
being sick in their life or um, so the intentionality behind people getting into it is usually really golden.
Yeah, and like MDs, of course, always tend to get a bad rap, but like I've met some MDs that were assholes, that were jerks personally, but I've never met somebody who didn't care about their patients. And I think being able to sort of separate the, their worldview about what medicine should be or how work should be done might be different than mine, but at the base, they care about their patients,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're good doctors. They're just different people than we are, and they live in a different world and have different stressors, and you
yeah.
know,
No, and where I worked last at North Suburban, we had a really nice crew. We had some amazing intensivists or pulmonologists that I
hmm.
worked with, and it was a co-creative process, because we
Okay.
were a collaborative process because which that's a really awesome, I would say, progression uh,
Hmm.
on that end of things. That's moving towards what we're talking about, where it used
Yeah.
to be, the doctors were kind of saw themselves as um, yeah, there wasn't as much collaboration with the nurses, I would say, back in the day.
Yeah.
And now, and I guess where I was going to say, saw the caring is in the ICU. We have a lot of end of life issues.
Yeah.
And so talking to families, um,
Hmm.
they have to make that hard decision. Uh,
Yeah. When to stop care or when to, yeah.
and being, and that's where you could really see people's bedside manner. And I just blown away.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I want to emphasize, I'm not talking smack about the medical professionals out there. I'm
No.
one of them. I'm not anymore, and they work their ass off every day to help save people's lives.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
our kind of topic and what you do,
Hmm.
and just setting maybe a little bit of a contrast between what you do and what's out there, and kind of yeah,
It is for sure. And the idea of coaching and guiding people through how to like empower them through a process is sort of a natural evolution of what Chinese medicine is really meant to be. It's great for acute care within its own limitations, but its strong point, its sweet spot, is really in empowerment. Um, and it's just somewhere that our society needs to go, where we
so
take a little more personal responsibility and we develop a team of people around us to help us get where we need to go. Um,
yeah, yeah, I love the
because,
empowerment piece.
well, because the Chinese perspective doesn't separate body, mind, and spirit. You have to address all of them. And to address the mind, the mental body, the emotional body, and the spirit, you have to talk to the person. You have to get the person on board. The physical body, if your leg is broken, I don't really need you to participate. But
Yeah, and so I was describing that. So I think I put in the comments that, or the description, that you use authentic relating, which is something I'm really interested in your practice to help you. I said to help you connect with your patients when we were talking offline. I think the first time,
mhm.
actually, it's more to help them really connect with that inner essence, or to connect with themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a physician, any physician, whatever medical system you practice, you have to be able to authentically relate with your clients, your patients,
Mm-hmm.
because they're coming to you to trust you. And if you can't be present with them, then you're not really doing your job as a doctor to kind of hold space for them.
Yeah.
But as the physician, when I work with a patient and I'm trying to hold space for them, usually the first space you're trying to get to is for them to hold more space for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
to authentically relate internally rather than to get them to go out and relate externally. And Taoism has a very big emphasis on that concept of what they would call the inner chapters or the outer chapters of our lives. And the relationship we may have on a Facebook Live video is an external chapter. It's relating with another person, it's relating with something outside of ourselves. But that inner dialogue that goes on of like, am I presenting myself well? Am I speaking clearly? Are there enough viewers on the call? Is there whatever the monkey mind that we hear in meditation, right? That's our inner chapters. And part of that sort of route of cultivation is being able to sit on the cushion with our inner chapters and authentically relate to
I love the way
ourselves.
I love the way you put that. Sit on the
Yeah.
cushion with our chapters. That's beautiful.
Right? And
Yeah. And like
because
integral, we have interiors and exteriors, and the four
mhm,
quad similar, which is a lot, whoops, derived from, a lot of Eastern philosophies and stuff
yeah.
too.
And so that journey of authentic relating is sort of like there's not really a way for me to be open and be vulnerable and be authentic with another person if I haven't really done it for myself,
Yeah.
right?
Amen.
It's just there's not a way. And it's all shades of gray, right? I can be authentic with myself maybe about the fact that I'm a certain age or I'm a certain height or I'm a certain weight or I'm a certain whatever I can maybe, but then maybe there's certain parts of my life that I'm not ready to sit and have presence with. And so
Mhm.
there's this constant refinement on the cushion or off the cushion of peeling away the things that are blocks to our self.
Yeah, that really pinged me, and and just taking it slow.
Hmm.
I know from my own personal experience, I have a big problem with just wanting, like, to like, if I'm learning a thing, I want to be like awesome at it right away. And it's the same, with doing spirit inner work.
Hmm.
I That's it's been a big journey or healing or learning process for me to just realize I don't have to do it all right now, and that, yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
okay if it takes some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And there's
it takes what
there's
it
exactly, and
that's,
there's layers to it. It's
that's
like,
something big my AA sponsor says. Takes what it takes sometimes.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's layers to the process of sort of unfolding layers of protection that we build up because we all have trauma, we all have wounds, actual or perceived. It doesn't even matter to get caught up in did the person mean what they said, that we interpreted it, whatever. Like, none of that really matters. The fact is that we experience it as a trauma, and that creates some armoring. But that armoring that we experience armors us from the outside world, but it also becomes a block to our inner world.
Yeah.
And so those protective mechanisms that we want to unravel so that we can authentically relate externally also are the same blocks that are preventing us from relating internally as well. And so by going in both directions of stepping out and interacting with people and being triggered and trying to stretch our boundaries and connect more deeply, it invites us to then connect internally more deeply. And by going internally more deeply, it allows us to step out externally more deeply.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the big whys, back to, just authentic, well, we're still talking about authentic relating is identifying why, why would we do this practice,
mhm,
is identifying relational blind spots, and
mhm.
that can be with myself, and yeah, and then
With
obviously
others.
it's reciprocal. Yeah,
Yeah,
to the degree that I am kind of cut off to my accessing myself, and this is what you said earlier, I'm just restating it, it to the degree I'm kind of cut off from other people. And so the more I can
exactly.
love, the more I can accept myself, the more I can get in touch with myself, the more I can do that for others. And the phrase I always love to use is, if my cup's not full, I don't have anything to give.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um,
Um,
and so
and
sometimes that beginning stage, it's useful just to have somebody write it down on paper. Like, I'm thinking this, I'm feeling that, and you just sort of like begin the process of, it's still a little external to you because you're just writing it down, but somehow it's a little bit safer than having to really sit on the cushion with whatever that emotion is or whatever that trigger is. Um, and then the Taoists, because so much of their work required people to have done that inner work, developed ways through embodiment practices like Qigong and yogic practices, and with herbal medicines, and with certain meditation techniques, and inner dialoguing and external dialoguing, ways to help get people to move through that. And
mm,
that's sort of what leads towards the idea of microdosing is like, how do you support
Beautiful segue.
that process? How do you support that process in that journey? Because really, they were just biohackers, right?
Right.
They knew somebody was coming to the temple. Normally, you don't leave society to go to a temple unless you've got some sort of trauma that you're trying to work through. So the people that were drawn to the temples, whether it be Buddhist or Taoist, were usually people that had some baggage. Um, and if you've been around for 100 years or 200 years or 500 years or 1,000 years as a temple, you start to see patterns. And then you're like, okay, well, how do we get people through this healing process more rapidly?
Mm.
How do we get them back in touch with divinity, with God, with Tao, with Buddha, whatever you want to label it as, um, in a way that's a little bit more rapid, a little bit smoother.
Mm. Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier in the topic or in the call that we were going to get onto this topic, and yeah, that was a beautiful segue into this like biohacking. You say,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people out there have heard about and really interested in. Um, and so one thing that you shared with me when we were talking offline is what I had always thought of microdosing was psychedelic mushrooms,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that people do. I personally haven't tried it. I have done plenty of psychedelic mushrooms,
Mm-hmm.
but I usually take more macro
Megadoses,
doses, I would say.
macrodoses, yeah. Um, and there is a space and
um,
time for both sides of the coin. But
right.
there's been now there's they're beginning double-blinded, placebo-controlled studies with microdosing. So it's really hitting mainstream.
Cool.
Um, and one of the biggest studies that came out was the MAPS study, where they were using MDMA, which is the sort of medical version of ecstasy, right? For
Yeah.
people with
Yeah.
really stubborn, untreatable PTSD.
Mm,
And I forget what the study was. I think it was 3 controlled setting experiences on MDMA, but their PTSD was completely in remission over a year later. from that. And this was people who'd had PTSD for, I think it was over 15 or 17 years that had not responded to any conventional treatments. And
What do
so
you
they're showing,
what
hmm?
is research showing? Uh, like, what is the manifestation that ecstasy kind of gives?
The understanding is that this would be macrodosing, not microdosing,
Mhm.
but it relaxes the amygdala enough to kind of allow us to become present with whatever is there.
Mm.
Because often what happens is when we have a trigger, if that's a major PTSD, say from war or rape or trauma or something really significant, versus the accumulated PTSD that we all carry from just life, right?
Hmm.
In the language of Chinese medicine, those emotional memories and the emotions themselves are stored in the blood, and there's a certain amount of heat around them. There's a charge. So when that memory comes out of the memory closet or the memory banks and it comes into our primary view when we're triggered in our PTSD, there's a lot of heat, there's a lot of agitation, there's a lot of anxiety around it. And in that relaxing of the amygdala, we're able to not be so caught up in what Zen might call the second arrow, the story around the actual event that's happening. I'm triggered, and then I get caught up with the fact that I'm triggered, and I get wound up in the triggered spot, which is what happens for all of us, right? And if we can reduce the intensity, if you know, and I think we all know this intrinsically, if you're triggered at 1% or you're triggered at 100%, it's a very different experience. And at
Yeah,
1%, we can usually hang out with the fact that we're triggered.
yeah,
We don't run
yeah.
from it, we don't shut down.
It's cool. I feel like we're kind of back to talking about this welcoming, um, and a big topic I've been talking to people about is how do we alchemize grief. Is a really
Hmm.
thing I'm interested in, and but I think you know we first have to accept it. That
Yeah.
we're have this grief.
Hmm.
Before we pull out and want to try and cut it out, and that's that kind of programming again. Like want this instant kind of to be done with it, and then when that doesn't happen, it gets. Go ahead.
Yeah. It is, we want it to go away, not even just from a programming sense, but because it sucks. Like who wants to hang out with something that's painful, right? Grief is painful, and so we don't want to keep feeling it, but we have to honor the fact that we are feeling it.
And so you're
And
saying with the microdosing that so it's kind of adding some softness to the amygdala, so that we can
exactly.
actually be grief or that anger or that PTSD,
Yeah.
um, and move through it, really really fully feel it and welcome it, and then move through it, because
Yeah,
what
I
we
think
resist persists, right?
exactly. I think in the traditions of the East, there seems to be a sort of a unified perspective that the way to get over these things is to go through them, not around them. You have to be present with your grief. You have to be present with your trigger. You have to come face to face with your demons to move beyond them.
Yeah.
And
One thing I wanted to highlight too, again, and it's
mhm,
just I think in service of more acceptance, is that we're just, so what you're talking about with the trauma, or being in a trigger mode, is
mhm.
like a fight or flight mode,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that we are biologically hardwired that we can't really be curious, therefore we can't really be relational when we're in trigger mode or fight or flight, because
Absolutely.
back in the day when we were running around as cavemen, running from
Hmm.
dinosaurs and all kinds of other predators, if we
Hmm.
heard something in a bush over here and we got curious about it,
Hmm.
we wouldn't be here anymore. And so
Exactly.
it is just a biological hardwiring that when you're in fight or flight, you can't be curious or relational. And that's not your fault. And it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
It's actually why you're here. So again, like
exactly.
acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what they figured out was like, okay, well, if you have to be present with whatever is there to get through whatever is there, then really where we want to focus our efforts is on developing tools to help you be present with whatever is there. Because
Hmm.
they knew that if you could be present, then you could work through it. So why try to give you something to get you through it? Why not just give you tools to help you be present with it? And then as you become more and more present with it, it loses its power and you naturally sort of organically move through it.
Yeah. I'm kind of going
Uh,
back to you were talking about, yeah, again, empowerment, and yeah,
mhm.
it's 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 just good wisdom of, you know, uh, teaching people to take that ownership of their own.
Yeah, and the way I like to describe it is, like especially with severe trauma, it's like a pressure cooker. There's a lot of heat. There's a lot of internal pressure and charge, fight or flight, hormone, adrenal energetics that are going on there. And so sometimes what we need to do is just begin to let some of the steam off with medications, with practices. I use the term side processing. So, like, if I'm really triggered and I've done martial arts forever, my go to way to process is to go train. So, I'll go and I'll do some forms, I'll hit the heavy bag, something that just lets me move my physical body. And I'm not in my mind at all, I'm just moving physically. And at the end of training, at the end of that hard workout, I'll feel better. But that feeling better doesn't mean I've processed whatever the trigger was. I just processed the reaction to the trigger.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I won't be as triggered. I'll have let go of some of that heat in the pressure cooker, and then I can sit, and then I can investigate, and then I can begin to come into presence with whatever is actually there. But when I'm really triggered, if you ask me to go sit on the cushion and be present with it, I've done it for many years and I could force it,
Yeah.
but it's not very effective and it's also just not very kind.
I like that. Yeah. Well, and it's like another hack,
Yeah.
It could be running. You do kung
Yeah.
fu. I like
Yeah.
riding bikes.
Yeah.
Uh,
It could be anything. And it's just good to know that that's not the processing, but it's a step in the direction of processing.
I'm glad you bring that up because even myself, this is really good knowledge for me
Mhm.
because that is a big way I deal with stress is exercise, and I think many people out there do.
Yeah.
And
And I,
I would imagine maybe have think that that's good. That's enough. Like
hmm
stress, I'll go work out. I feel better. Then do it again tomorrow.
hmm
And so what you're saying is you're kind of just treating the symptoms a little bit.
exactly. And it's a lot better than taking an SSRI. It's a lot better than having a drink. It's a lot better
Who's
than smoking a joint. It's a lot better than, whatever. Exercise is a healthier choice. But at some point, even going off and doing yoga, kung fu, tai chi, things that are really good for ourselves can still be sort of avoidance practices.
hmm.
Um, and it's not that we should stop them ever because they are good practices.
Yeah.
We should
Again,
practice tai chi. We should practice yoga, right?
yeah.
We should exercise.
Hmm.
Um, and when we're really triggered, they're a phenomenal way to help let out some of that steam.
Hmm.
But they don't really address what started the fire in the first place.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of similar to what we were talking about with Western medicine. We're treating
hmm
the symptoms, not the root of the problem. And
Yeah.
and it's good. It works and it saves
hmm
lives,
Yeah.
keeps people moving forward. But
If you want to
again,
go
my
deeper,
creating these interviews and the documentaries and things that I'm working on is how can we make these practices better, and
hmm
how can we change the world?
yeah.
And so, mm, so we're not saying it's wrong or that's bad. It's just how can we refine it? How can we improve on what we already have been doing? And again, that's another kind of integral theory, where we're not
hmm
throw the baby out with the bathwater. What we
No.
what we've been doing has gotten us to where we are now, and so that's good. And there's nothing wrong with any of it, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But there could always be maybe some room for improvement. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's nice to see. I think what has always drawn me to the Chinese approach is this idea that you can actually integrate all of them. You can integrate your mountain biking with your psychotherapy and your meditation practice, and actually, they really can all be connected if you understand how to connect the dots. And that really is the beauty of the Chinese approach, or at least as I understand it, is how we were able to integrate those things for our own personal development. So it's not like you're exercising just to stay fit. You're
Yeah.
exercising as a way to amp up your psychotherapy and your meditation practice and all of that. It's just they can all be tied together, which empowers us that much more.
So so can you talk a little bit more about, because we got onto the microdosing thing and we didn't quite get into, we just touched on, we got um, the Chinese medical herbs, because we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about relics and mushrooms, and I know many people out there, like I was starting to say, have heard about this and maybe aren't have never done anything like that, and it's scary. Or
Mm-hmm.
and so I thought it was cool to learn from you that there's these other options that are completely legal and safe and have the same effect, and that you have those
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Say I might not use the word same effect, but obviously because psychedelics are illegal, there's a limitation to the capacity for people to have access to them. And whether they should be or they shouldn't be is a whole separate thing, and there's a whole political thing around all of that. But the basic idea is that, most things affect our psyche. You can have a glass of wine, it's going to change how your brain functions.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a cup of coffee in the morning, it's going to change how your brain functions. And so the Taoists, being practitioners of Chinese medicine and working with people through that sort of cultivational journey, came up with herbal formulas and ways to use herbs and teas to help people work through that journey, which is basically what microdosing is. When somebody comes in to see me for a broken bone, when they come in with an acute flare up of rheumatoid arthritis or MS or something like that, we use Chinese herbs in macro doses to treat the disease that is going on, to treat the injury, because you're trying to work with that dense physical body. But when you want to tap into the the energetics of microdosing, you use a smaller dose, and you connect it with your meditative mindfulness presencing practices. And what you can find is that when the mind is really active, there are certain herbs or certain formulas you can use to help that monkey mind slow down a little bit. So then when you're sitting on the cushion, you can really be more present with yourself. You can be more present with your traumas. There are certain ones that can help open Pandora's box to bring things out of the closet. Because we may know that like we're struggling with depression, but we don't know why we're depressed. We don't know what's there. And we need to be able to have some sort of awakening, some sort of insight to see inside of ourselves to understand where is this coming from. And the Chinese came up with ways to facilitate that process. It doesn't take away the work, it doesn't take away the personal responsibility, but it makes the journey a lot easier because we have some support. We have plant spirit with us in that journey. And likewise, they have formulas that are designed for, when things are going well and you're trying to do maybe some light visualization or color visualization practices. If you're from a Tibetan or a Taoist lineage that does visualization of light and color, herbs that can help us to cultivate more of that sort of divine light that many meditative traditions try to do. And the Taoists would also anoint the body with oils, with sacred herbs, and so you can also use essential oils as part of that. And it's a really powerful tool to
I'm
bring into your practice,
but
right?
I'm really interested in trying it myself personally.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we can talk about
I'm
that
glad to
offline.
get you some. I can
Yeah,
uh I can put some in the mail to you, no problem.
yeah. I don't want the
Um,
Pandora's box one.
I'm a huge fan of
Good.
I have
Got Pandora's box figured out.
well yeah, and
No,
that's usually like
when
we're
I
usually
heard you say that,
mhm,
it really resonated with me. Uh, where I'm at in my personal work
mhm,
is is kind of feeling into. I have a lot of PTSD. I lost a child.
mhm,
I had other things that have happened. Um, is which then manifests oftentimes as anger or rage or
mhm,
but when I drill down, it's fear for me.
mhm,
And lately I've been getting really on the edge of that fear, but like, and it's a mountain of fear.
mhm.
And but I don't even I can't even really know, I don't even know what it's about. It's hard to, yeah. So that's, yeah,
Yeah.
really hearing what
I
you said.
mean, in the original text of Chinese medicine, it's called the Yellow Emperor's Internal Classic, the Huangdi Neijing. Basically say all diseases come from two pathogenic factors, wind and cold. And because the Chinese were very metaphorical, contextual, it really represent concepts rather than actual cold or actual wind per se. And cold represents fear, represents contraction, withdrawal, at like one of the primary sources of all disease. And if you look at authentic relating, or you look at meditative practices, or you look at any of that sort of stuff, and it is cold is at the center of that. This fear of opening up, of being vulnerable, to use Brene Brown's language. There is this fear of coming into presence with ourself and in being vulnerable with ourselves or with others. And that would be the cold concept. And then the wind represents adaptability, the capacity to adapt to the fact that we get things thrown at us that we don't like.
Hmm.
And how do we adapt to it? We lose a job, we have a divorce, we have a death in the family, somebody mugs us down a dark alley, we get a president that is not presidential. We have all these things that we have to adapt to that are traumatic, right? And it's we need the capacity to flow, even when life is shitty, right? And if we
Yeah,
can't,
especially if it's shitty. Yeah.
yeah, and when we can't, that's when we feel the pain. Because wind, it's interesting in the language of Chinese medicine, wind is an evolution of qi. So the goal in like Tai Chi practices and Qigong practices is to get the qi to flow. And
Hmm.
when the qi is erratic in its flow, it becomes wind as a medical side of it.
Hmm.
And in a way, that represents the idea that we only feel wind when we're not in flow. So if you're a leaf in the wind and you're being blown by the wind, it doesn't affect you because you're just going with it. But if you try to resist the wind, then you really feel how powerful it is.
Plugging my phone in here real quick because it was getting a
Yeah,
little.
yeah. Low on battery.
Yeah, I got to get a new battery. I'm gonna try and do it myself. I have to lean it back a little bit because of just the way the
Mm-hmm.
balance is. We're at
Um,
almost at an hour now, and I know you're a super busy guy,
oh,
so I give you a heads up that it's 10:55 my time, 9:55
okay.
your time. And yeah, I think there's a lot more here we can talk about, and so we should probably set up another one of these sometime
Yeah,
in the
glad to.
yeah,
Glad to go into more sort of physical
depth.
sides of things. The basic idea is you take your tea,
Hmm.
you apply your oils, and then you do your inner work. And they're just really, whether that be a microdose of psilocybin or whether that be a Chinese herbal tea, Um,
Mhm.
they can be really a great friend in that journey of trying to work through these triggers. Um, and basically, people are in one of two places, right? Where either we know something's wrong, we don't know what it is, or we know something's wrong and we know what it is and we can't break free from it,
Mhm.
right? We're kind of in one of two spaces most of the time. We're either trying to investigate or trying to break free.
Mhm.
Um, and so I developed formulas for those two sort of scenarios. But there are many in the history of Taoist medicine that are designed to support our meditative practices.
And I put a link, if people out there you want more information on this, I put a link to your website on the header of this live feed. What else
Great,
would you
yeah.
people do who are interested in getting more information on this?
Yeah, reach out and connect with me. I have a bunch of podcasts on my website as well that people can listen to where I talk about it.
Awesome.
But best thing is just reach out. I'm glad to talk about it and glad to kind of help support people in that direction. It's it doesn't take away the journey that we all have, and we all have our stuff to work through. Um, but it can make it a little bit easier, a little bit softer, a little bit quicker, so that we don't have to struggle quite as long.
Yeah,
Um,
personally, I'm all about the hacks.
yes, me too. There's a part of me that's a mad scientist and just loves to experiment on myself with this stuff.
Hmm.
And there's a part of me that is human and has my own drama and my own history and my own traumas that I need to work through as well. And
Right.
I want to work through them. And so if I can find a way to do my work, but also have some plant spirit medicine with me as a supporting agent, then that's
Why not?
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, I think we'll set up maybe we get offline. We can talk about another time. I want to again encourage everyone to post your comments. I haven't had much time to really look through these. I gotta. It's actually kind of better for me to go through them and address. I didn't see any questions come up. Let me just look through here. If anybody,
Mhm.
everyone's pretty much just saying hi. I just want to make sure it's. I do. It's part of what we've been talking about. Are you still there? Okay, you froze for a second.
Yeah, yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Did you hear that question, or can you see that question from
No,
Zachary?
no.
I think I think we're breaking up a little bit. Um, yeah, I think we talked a lot about that particular subject, and if I'll message you when we get done with this, Zachary. Thanks for your question. Just yeah, mostly people saying hello. It looks like just be me. Uh, so Justin, I just want to thank you for getting on here with me. I know you got a really busy schedule, and oh, there he is. Let me add you back so we can say goodbye. Let's see. Can I see if I can add him? Oh, your viewers. Add. There we go. Yes. Yeah, we want Justin to be able to say goodbye. Hi, Maggie. I see you out there. It's good to see you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably my Wi-Fi. We got that, like I said, that science convention going on right now, so it's bandwidth's getting a little squeezed.
Got
Um,
it.
um, one person, I think we kind of talked about this most of the conversation, so I think we're good. Which Zachary Robinson, thanks for your question. What's your thoughts on someone who lives in the mind and has a harder time feeling into their body?
There are a ton of practices for helping us develop somatic awareness. The most basic of them, of course, is the sort of contract, relax, coming into presence with our body. Yoga, Tai Chi, any of those sort of physical movement practices are gateways. And I think the key I usually feel is to find a physical practice that requires mindfulness. So yoga, tai chi, kung fu, that sort of stuff, guided relaxation exercises, but find something that you really enjoy. You won't continue doing it if you don't enjoy it. But you can make a commitment to yourself to be like, okay, I'm going to sign up for yoga classes or Tai Chi classes for 3 months. And I'm going to make a commitment to myself to do this practice for a period of time. And one of the things that one of my teachers would always recommend is that you do your practice. So you do your sun salutations, or you do your Tai Chi form, or you do whatever your practice is. And at the end of your practice, after you've finished your class, you spend 10 minutes sitting and being present with your body. Notice what feels different. Notice how it feels different. So it's not just the practice, but it's after you've done the practice, taking a pause to observe how the practice affected you.
Mm.
That will really help you begin to feel your body more and develop a relationship to realize, same thing like, you have a beer and then you stop and you feel what it does to your body. You develop a somatic awareness to how something from the outside is impacting you. You drink your herbs, you have a cup of coffee, you go for a run, and at the end of the run, you pause and you actually spend some time just being present with your body.
Mm. I like that. Wow.
Um,
I'm glad you got back on here to answer Zachary's question. Um,
uh,
yeah, what I that just it just feels so welcoming and soft and supportive. Your advice, and yeah,
yeah.
I really like the part about finding something that you really like. I was thinking about, yeah, like for both of us, kung fu. It was like we liked sparring, and we liked the movies and just the whole
Mhm.
idea of it, and the history. Um, and I just was putting myself back in that time that if someone was like, here, try meditation, I'd have been
Mhm.
probably like, because I kind of got to it through the kung fu. It was like the spoonful of honey makes the medicine go down kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, and the reality is that any of these things on the physical level, on the emotional level, or on the spiritual level, they're not quick fixes. They're meant to be life paths that we're going to have to put some hours in with. So you might as well choose a practice that you enjoy,
Mm.
because you're going to be doing it for a long time, because that's just the nature of it. There are no spontaneous, I mean, sure, spontaneous enlightenment can occur, I suppose, but that's not the norm.
Yeah, and I would my advice on that too would be to if you can, Zachary, find something like that has some community built
Hmm.
into it that
Hmm.
you can share in that experience with other people
Yeah, yeah, for
and
sure.
and integrate it. I
Hmm.
think a lot effectively. I mean, typically you're always going to have some sort of master sensei sifu or like yoga teacher or what um, but it's nice when you can have a several people to kind of connect with and share your experiences with. I think that for me at least, it helps me um, yeah, get to that softer place, I think, a little quicker. But I
And
am kind of a relational person.
well, I'd use it in my, I have my own kung fu school, and when we do work that is sort of mindfulness, somatic awareness practices, at the end, we often talk about it with each other. Hey, what did you feel when you were doing this? Or how do you feel different? Because there is a deep value in being able to know other people had a similar experience to me.
Right.
It's not just the solitary journey. It's like you have pain, I have pain. If we can understand, oh, he hit me here and this is what I felt, or you hit me there and that's what I felt, and you share the experience, you actually learn more through our shared experiences than we do just doing it solo.
Totally. Hey, I don't know, for whatever reason my battery's having a hard time charging here, so I just got a 10%er, and I have
Okay.
to get a charge this. I'm actually getting on another call in a little bit.
Okay.
Man, I've really enjoyed this. I've learned a ton. I hope everyone else that out there has too. I really appreciate your wisdom and all the um, just such like thoughtful and caring, supportive advice.
Thanks for
And
having me. It's glad to be here.
yeah, and
Oh,
let's do it again. I want to mention real quick. I'm going to probably plug this several times today. Just a friend of mine, and I just say it while you're on here. Erin Hickok. She's from Austin, and she's created. Well, let me read her description real quick. She calls herself the connectress and creator of cards for connections. I don't know if you've heard about these. You mentioned something
I haven't.
earlier. It's a really cool an authentic relating card game that she's created,
Huh.
and where people can get into this practice without any instruction, basically just a deck of cards and just start going and and so she's in the midst. She's I think 4 or 5 days out from her the end of her Indiegogo campaign. She's raising $15,000 to help finance taking this to the rest of the world, and she's well over halfway there.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just wanted to mention her, and I'll post a little link to her Indiegogo campaign in the comments if anyone wants to check it out. And I'm going to be talking with her later today, about I think 1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, so a few hours from now. I really love the cards. I love the idea of just having a tool to be able to gift people this more agency around relationship without really having, to just sit down and start playing a game.
Hmm.
And go to her Indiegogo. She's got samples of the cards. She's got a really cool little video you can find on my site too that describes it probably better than I'm doing right now. But we'll have her on later today, and we'll dive into a little deeper. So I
Okay.
wanted to mention
And
that.
if anybody was watching or said anything, I can't see the comments, so
Yeah, well,
if I
that's what
didn't
I went.
wave, I
Cool. Yeah, I went through mostly. It was just a lot of hellos. I want to say, yeah. So, well, hi, Justin. You're on the top of the list here. um, Jerem, hello. Annabelle, good to see you. I throw you a wave. She says hello. And Anna Mika, Rana, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. Zachary, thanks for that awesome question. Anomar, hello. Thanks for joining us. Lisa, Laura, Zachary. Yeah, so there's a lot of hellos. Just want to
okay.
thank everyone for joining us. Definitely visit Justin's website and reach out to him if you have any questions about any of what we talked about, or post it in the comments. And yeah, I'd love to get together again and get into some of this a little bit more deeper. And thank you so much.
You're very
Appreciate you.
welcome. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
All right. Have a
All right.
beautiful day.
You too.
Love you. Have a good day.